Hello and welcome back to the Future History Project, Isaac Asimov's Future History Project, and I'm here to talk about specifically Utopia by Roger MacBride Allen. It's the third of the his robot trilogy that I will talk about as a whole. Also, um, the three volumes. First was Caliban, and you can see a video about that. And then Inferno. Uh, Caliban was written in 1993 or published in 1993, 1994 for Inferno. Let me just verify that. Yes, 1994, and I believe Utopia was 1996. Yeah, 1996. Now, this one sort of is approximately 6 years after the events in Inferno. And the new law robots have established their underground city of Valhalla, hidden in the Utopia section of Inferno, a desert. And Sheriff Kresh is now fully governor, and he's been governor for 5 years. So at the end of Inferno, he was calling for an election at some point because he was left sort of inherited by the previous Governor Gregg, the position. But he wanted an election to sort of speak for the people to speak, to have him. And the whole situation is on Inferno is that the terraforming was botched, and it's de-terraforming, and they've got to re-terraform it, and they've got settlers on the planet to help to do that, along with the robots. But they're just sort of making some headway in small areas, but in total, it will be a disaster in a century. The planet will either go through an ice age or become a dust bowl. And Kresh had sort of had both a settler and a spacer way of doing things. He was hedging his bets, but it's still not working. But the spacer one was a huge positronic brain, and the settler view was just a very big computer, very advanced computer, as they called it, almost like a calculating machine, but not sentient, not like the positronic robots or positronic brain. Now, a young astronomer, a young scientist, comes up with an idea of crashing a comet into the planet by creating a river, basically from the North Pole to the southern regions, the Southern Sea, and that way it'll. There's not a whole lot of detail of how this would work, but apparently, uh, within the world, it would. There was a chance that it would work, but also the destruction that it could cause if it went awry, the crashing of this comet, to break it up into 12 pieces, to create craters and then open up the craters to have water flow, a river or a passage. And but the new law robots there, Valhalla, is right in like the basically the first strike zone. So, and everybody has to be evacuated from there. The governor decides to do this, but there are a lot of other political maneuvering. The settlers do not want this to happen, um, so they try to kidnap the scientists. That fails. But then the sort of extreme right wing group, they're called um, oh, what are their names? But they're extreme right group, and they want robots and more robots and more robots, but they say that this is the only way. They sort of throw in their lot with Kresh and the possibility of this. There's lots that happens throughout. The leader, Beetle, or Beetle, of the opposition, this right wing organization, gets kidnapped, and he gets actually kidnapped by Prospero, the new law robot. Um, we don't know that until the sort of the end, but I'm making spoilers here, but it sort of needs to in order to make sense. And Caliban, he's been Prospero has been his friend since the beginning, basically, for 5 or 6 years now. But he has noticed that he is unstable and possibly insane. And he has gone insane because he wants to destroy this battle, and he starts killing other robots as well. So Caliban saves the opposition. So there is a big conflict, a first law conflict with the positronic brain that is running the terraforming organization, or the terraforming process, because they've set it up that it's a simulation, and it's a female positronic brain, believes that it's a simulation, which in order that decisions that it makes, that she makes, won't actually impinge on human life. But she finds out that it is not a simulation, and has first law conflict, but in the end does see the greater good of what's happening, and try to minimize the human fatalities, or any injury to humans. And yeah, it all works out. The comet fragments land and collide, and everything's going fine. The projections are that the planet will be okay. So that's sort of where it ends. But there's a lot more to this trilogy than just the plot. It's set after Robots of Dawn. It's before the Empire. And it's at a time where there is tension between the settlers and the spacers. The spacers are the original Earthlings that left Earth a long time ago and settled 50 worlds. And the settlers are those that are the ones that have left Earth, that are fleeing Earth, the dying Earth, basically, and settling, and just like going across the galaxy and settling and terraforming as quick as possible. So there's tension between them, because the spacers don't trust the settlers. Settlers don't like the spacers, mainly because they're robots, because there is that robots had been outlawed on Earth, millennia prior to this, and they do things their way. But on this planet Inferno, they've come together to work to help terraform, and it's sort of an experiment in other ways. But that's the sort of milieu that everything is happening in. But it harkens back to Isaac Asimov's way of his robotic stories, and it's usually something to do with the three laws, the laws of robotics, the conflicts that can happen, and other things that will cause the issues and philosophical questions that will happen. And Roger MacBride Allen definitely has done this, and he stepped up the game a little bit, and has asked and and put forward many questions and potential answers to a lot of this, because the new law robots have modified uh, three laws, and there's also this aspect of we do know through the future history that there's an empire and then there's foundation, and there are no robots during this period. So what has happened in between? Because the Isaac Asimov left off with robots and empire, but it's still like we still don't know how it got to that point. And here's a bit of a stopgap, and it does explain a little bit. The very, very last, the epilogue part of uh, of uh, uh, of Utopia does explain some things, or potentially explains many things. Like throughout all this, there is, and even in Asimov's, it is pretty clear that the spacer society is decadent. It is gonna fade out, but how does that happen, and what are the effects of it? And these are things that were never dealt with. Roger MacBride Allen has dipped his toe into this and done, I think, extremely well. Because it's all the way through there. It's showing that the robots, the three laws, are hindering humans doing anything with the spacers, because they're wrapped in cotton wool. Like the robots won't allow anything, and causing problems because like it comes to a point where the three laws almost caused the plan of the comet not happening, and therefore it didn't happen. And then the planet would die. And that's the three laws. And also too that they realize that they're not going to survive. The spacers are not going to survive. So what happens to the spacers? And at the end, the one character talks about like what happened on Earth, pre-space flight era Earth, ancient history, where there were many nations, and then eventually they fought each other, but they subsumed, and they just sort of grew together and melded together and became the Earthlings that were the ancestors of the spacers and the settlers. So now out in space, you've got the settlers and the spacers. And what is happening in the template of what's going to happen is they're gonna meld together. Uh, the spacers will cease to exist, but they'll be subsumed by and worked into a new culture, which will be the empire. That's the sort of uh, that's the feel that you leave off at the end, and this and his story with on the planet Inferno shows how it can happen, and these are the steps, and this is sort of what's going to happen, and until somebody else writes something else in between to maybe refine that a little more. This is what we've got. So this is how it's sort of the progression of humanity is going to happen. Um, and yeah, it's just and but also too, like there's things in here that are very Asimov in the sense, because Asimov had the view that rationality, being rational, will win out. And there's the characters like this very very uh right wing character is sort of become he sees the rationality of things. He's rational, and he doesn't fight a thing. And then even the settler leader, the woman Tanya, she decides to she sees that things are going to change, so she realizes for the good of the people, her people, the settlers, and everybody else there, the things have got to change. So there's a rational thing that's going to happen with this. In real life, I don't think this happens, but this is within this universe that rationality wins out, for the most part. In the end, rationality, being rational, wins the day to a certain extent. But there's sort of an ebb and flow of that all the way through. So yeah, so this is like we've read the the Susan Calvin trilogy. There was the like the what is it? However many books, 24 books of the Robot City, and then there was that other. I forget the author's name. Oh no, Tiedemann, the other robot trilogy that just extended the characters from Robot City. But there is, there's harkening back to things in this, because there is reference to the Robot City, because they at some point there's a mention of that they know of these cities or these planets where there's no humans and there's just the robots waiting for humans. So I think that's reference to Robot City. Um, and also too, there's references again back to how conflicts um, of the robots, and the conflict between the the three laws of robotics, or the potential problems that can come from this, and it's imbued with this fully, and it's really interesting, because you kind of wonder, because like obviously Daniel is a major player in all this, and he's somewhere in the background doing things, with his minions. Um, he's guiding things, so it's like, but I don't see him in here, and I don't see any reference so much to him, not really at all. So he's sort of left out, but he's there somewhere in the background. There's things that Daniel is doing, guiding humanity, and obviously he can't do everything, so he's taking up what is there, and making things disappear, or less so, and then promoting other things. So I think this kind of thing, he would promote the combination, or the um the spacers and the settlers of sort of breeding together and sort of creating something new. So yeah, and yeah, they're like, it's kind of weird. The um MacBride uses some archaic sort of ways, or to me they seem to be archaic, because it's like there's a few things, like he used get up be times, um a very very old thing to say, and be that as it may, or be that and as it may, and things like that he uses over and over throughout all the three volumes, which is a little odd for the language, but I also like the way, as I've said, in each one, where there's each chapter, but each chapter is split up into smaller little bits that have leave off something at the end, and then it's picked up later. But it keeps the action going from jumping place to place, and then everything sort of dovetails at the end, which is a normal thing. The only things like I'm talking about were things like the economy. Um, that's usually never actually explored very well in science fiction, and not here too, because you still wonder how the economy works on these things, where everybody has these robots and everything like that. So there's no details of that. You have to sort of figure it out and guess, and a willing suspension of disbelief as well. um, but there's other things that would been I was thinking, because this is also the month, or at the end, well actually it's the beginning of the second month now, of Hal for the Holidays, and Hal Clement is a very very hard science fiction writer, and he will go into detail of the ecology or alien species, the science behind stuff, and I almost like, with the terraforming, the way this was done, and other things like that, it would have been kind of neat to see how somebody like him would have put the details of the terraforming, the intricate scientific details of that in this story. It would make it a lot longer because I would still want because he wouldn't have all the character development and all this other background stuff that MacBride does. But I think he could add something to this with this, and even how they, the comet and everything, and how they dealt with the comet. It's things that you go, okay, it sounds good, but there's a question mark in the background of going, this is a lot. It's too easy. It's too calculated. It's too by numbers things at times. But that happens with a lot of stuff, and Asimov is guilty of that as well. But it would be kind of interesting to have somebody like that Hal Clement would put in all that kind of stuff, and then you have all this other stuff, and it would be a neat amalgamation of detailed hard science, but with superb characters. Oh well. It's obviously that didn't happen, and it'll never happen with these stories. But anyway, so we're done with these, and that's almost the end. It's not the full end of the non-Asimov material. There are a few other things coming up, but the next is the Empire trilogy, which is The Stars Like Dust, and this is a neat paperback series that I've got from what is the publisher here? Trying to find it here. They're Del Rey. They're Del Rey. Yeah, they're Del Rey. They're very nice. See, we're going back in time now when these were written. This was written in 1951. And this is a 2020 Del Rey edition. And so Stars Are Like Dust is the first one. The Currents of Space is the second one. And that was originally published in 1952. And Pebble in the Sky, the last of the Empire series. But there is another one. There is another story to read that is an early Asimov. But there's also the original version of one of these, and I'm not sure which one. Or, yeah, I'll have to. I've got it somewhere. It'll be interesting to look at that. But yeah, so this one was written in probably 1953. I would guess. Oh, actually, this is 1950. This one came first. Wait a minute. Do I have these in correct order? Yeah, Stars Like Dust is chronologically the first one, and then The Currents of Space, and then Pebble in the Sky. So yeah, so that'll be next, and I don't know if there's anybody. I think there's a few that might still be carry on with this, but there was a huge hiatus there. But I want to get through these. I'm determined to finish this as well, and but it will be some time before I am finished. Even after reading all the foundation books and everything else, there's still a lot of material that I want to read about the Future History Project, like critical material that's been done, but also to look at other things like the radio adaptations of this film adaptations. Well, there's not much in the way of film, but there's a couple TV things that were done. And the radio ones, the Foundation and the robot ones. And also to the looking at Harlan Ellison's script for iRobot, which I haven't done yet, which I will be at some point. So I'll be doing all this, and also too, Isaac Asimov did for Camden Records or Camdium Records. He did recordings, spoken word of sections of some of this material. So I'd like to look at that as well, and just sort of look at how if there's any different kind of interpretation he puts on it with speaking it. So yeah. But yeah, anybody else who's reading this, I'm thankful that anybody is still following along. This has been a long project, too long, really, but it's been interesting. Thank you.